when you say that God brings good from
Yes.
evil, where in text do you see that?
Well, I'll give you one example in the scriptures.
Okay.
Okay, in the Old Testament now, Judah is the fourth son from Jacob. And the story goes that Jacob had 12 sons, and his favorite son was Joseph, because Joseph was born to Rachel, his favorite wife. And at one point, after Jacob had given Joseph his colored robe and basically made him the star son, the other brothers were jealous of him and said, we should kill him. He's Dad's favorite. And they said, actually, wouldn't make any sense to kill him. Why don't we make some money off him and sell him into slavery? And Judah sold his brother into slavery to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. Now, Judah is in the bloodline of the Messiah, the tribe of Judah. That's where Jesus comes from. This is another reason why the Bible's not made up. You would never put this shady guy as in the bloodline of the Messiah, but he is. A bunch of other shady people too, but I don't have time for that. Anyway, so as you know, Joseph goes to Egypt. He's treated horribly. He's falsely accused of a crime. He's thrown into prison. And then he eventually works his way out of that. And then he becomes, I think, the third highest administrator in Egypt. And he sets a whole bunch of grain aside in case there's a famine. And then there is a famine in Israel, and his whole family, including Jacob and all his brothers, come to Egypt to escape the famine, and Joseph recognizes them. And you remember what he says to him when he recognizes them? He says, you dirty rats, you're going to pay for what you did to me. No, he doesn't say that. He says, what you meant for evil, God meant for good, the saving of many lives. In other words, this is known as the ripple effect. That every event that occurs in life ripples forward to affect trillions of other events. Most of the time we don't see the ripple effect. But in this case, we can see it. The very people that did evil, Judah and his brothers, had a ripple effect go forward that helped them later. Most of the time you don't see the ripple effect. This is, by the way, why you can trust God when inexplicable evil comes into your life.
So are you making that conclusion based on that story, or is it like throughout
That's
the Bible?
only an example of it. The doctrine of it comes from other places, including Romans chapter 8.
Okay.
Which says that we know that all things work together for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose. Notice he doesn't say all things are good. All things work together for good.
Okay.
And then it goes on, he says, to conform to the image of his Son. Remember we just talked about how sometimes that suffering can help you be more obedient? It helped Jesus. Sometimes going through difficulty and suffering and trial can do the same thing, to conform to the image of his Son. So that's one place you can get the doctrine for it. Another place you can get the doctrine for it is 2 Corinthians chapter 4, where Paul is ending a period where he's ending a section where he's talking about suffering. He ends it this way. He says, for our light and momentary afflictions are achieving for us a greater weight of glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, for what is seen is temporary. We fix our eyes on what is unseen, for what is unseen is eternal. In other words, you have to have an eternal perspective. You may not be able to make sense of this life just from the temporary, but all of this goes into eternity.